Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Thursday by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Jake Ciely from The Athletic. We are talking our starts and sits. We're talking some popular waiver pickups, and are we starting or sitting them this week or just stashing them? We're going to plant our flag on some players. We're going to do touchdown calls. It's a jam-packed show, as always. And if you're watching on YouTube, you might think, are we about to start talking some hockey based on Fitz's hat? We were just talking, this is a total coincidence, Fitz, but the Nordiques, a.k.a. the Avalanche, are playing the Whalers, a.k.a. the Canes, tonight, and you are wearing a Nordiques hat.
I didn't even know. Jake informed me of this shortly before the show, and apparently they're going to wear their throwback uniforms tonight, so I might have to catch some of this game. It's too complicated. Now, there is every sport going on, all four of the major sports. We're right before Halloween, so we're getting all these classic horror movies airing on various cable networks, which reminds me, are you guys scary movie guys? Worm, we have that company horror movie bracket set up where we're voting on the greatest horror movie of all time. So Jake is a horror movie guy. Are you a horror movie guy, Worm?
I am decidedly not. So far in that company-wide bracket that some of the folks here have put together, there have been 32 movies that are in the bracket so far. There will be 64. Of the 32, I have only seen 5 of them.
Oh, that's terrible.
And
it's awful.
The 5 I've seen are like, classic. Like Jaws is on there, Alien.
Jaws isn't a horror movie.
I agree with that, but I didn't make the list. Jaws, Alien. I saw they did like a modern region. So I did Get Out. I've seen 28 Days Later. I forget the 5th one that I saw.
So you won't see Weapons, is what you're telling me?
Probably not. I never saw like The Shining. I never saw
what about
like
Sinners. Sinners
like
is kind of not super horror-y.
I want to see Sinners. I just didn't get around to see it.
Jake,
Yeah.
Jake, what is your favorite horror movie of all time, or the best horror movie of all time?
I know it's off the normal from what people will say, but so horror movies for me have to impact me the second time because you know everything. So it's it really needs to. Event Horizon will always be my number one. I've seen that 4 times, and still the 4th time I'm like, this still freak. I saw it the first time in college and was like, we should probably do a Bible study after this movie.
Wow, that's it.
It's that fearsome.
That didn't even make our company bracket. That's a really good one. Mine right now, I used to always say the original Halloween, but then there was a theater in our area doing a classic movie night recap, and I rewatched The Thing from 1982 with Kurt Russell. Yeah. I don't know if there was one from like the 50s or 60s, but this was the Kurt Russell one.
So that's the thing. So you go watch, for everybody out there, and the show starts in 4 minutes or whatever it is. So you're already on YouTube. After this, go to Honest Trailers. They just did The Thing, and actually The Thing is a remake. Funny enough,
of like an
the
old
Thing from 1980. Yeah, there's a black and white, and I guess it's The Thing something. I think The Thing emerges or something. It's funny. That's actually a remake.
And right now there is a matchup in our brackets, horror movie bracket at the company, and it's between Carrie and The Thing. And Carrie was ahead of The Thing. If Carrie beats The Thing, I might have to leave the company.
I would be
that. Carrie is currently up 16-8. I refrained from voting in that one because I haven't seen either of them. Yes, some of the ones in our classics region: Psycho, The Exorcist, The Shining, Halloween, The Thing, Frankenstein, Carrie, Night of the Living Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Rosemary's Baby, Creature from the Black Lagoon. I've seen none of those.
You haven't seen The Exorcist?
No, I haven't seen The Exorcist. I watched Paranormal Activity, the first one, in the theater with on a date, like back in high school, and I had such a bad time. I was like, why would I ever? Why I don't like genuine horror movies. Like I like thrillers.
So you saw it, but you also saw it back when people thought it was real at first. Just like the Blair Witch,
there was like a lot of conversation about that.
Footage.
Yeah, or like Blair Witch Project. I remember hearing about that, kind of like people thinking it was real and that sort of thing. I just I don't enjoy the experience of scaring myself. I like thriller, like Silence of the Lambs is one of my favorite movies. So I can be a little scared, but a true horror movie is just very much not for me. I learned that a long time ago.
Well, we've got fantasy football horrors this week with 6 teams on bye. So
it is a bye-pocalypse here, which is scary in its own right. I forgot to write down the names of the teams on bye. It's the Seahawks. It's I can pull it up if we want to run them through everybody, but I'm sure
Raiders, Rams, Cardinals,
Jaguars,
Seahawks, and Jaguars.
Raiders.
Yep. All right, thanks. Yeah, so a lot of teams, a lot of good players there. Reminder for everybody that all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Let's jump into the show because we talked about movies long enough. We're going to start, as we always do, with the waiver ads here. Some of the popular names this week, and are we considering starting them right off the bat, or these guys that we were just picking up to stash on our benches for the foreseeable future? Might be more inclined to start them this week than other weeks, just given all the players on bye. We'll see what you guys think here. The most popular ad in our rankings was Kyle Monangai of the Bears. He, of course, is behind DeAndre Swift, but getting more run. They go up against what has been a very bad run defense in Baltimore so far this year. Ravens are getting some players back. I wonder what you guys think here. Fitz, Kyle Monangai, is he somebody that you're considering starting here in Week 8?
You could. I am starting him in one league where I'm particularly obliterated by buys. He's running back 29 in my rankings. Part of it is just the playability factor going against the Ravens run defense. Sorry, Worm. It's just been so terrible. And I will like Monangai more if Lamar Jackson isn't able to play for the Ravens this week, because right now, with the assumption that Jackson is going to be back, the Bears are 6.5-point underdogs. They might not have a super run-friendly game script, but if Jackson is out, different story. That could flip the script.
That's actually one of my favorite bets this week is Bears plus 6.5, because if Lamar ends up not playing, that's going to look like amazing.
And they're live even if he does play, exactly.
Even if he does play, I don't think that's a bad line at all. So when you're baking in the extra fact that he might not even end up playing, that's like one of my favorite bets of the whole week. Jake, what do you think about Monangai? Where's he ranked for you? I think Fitz said kind of the late 20s. Does that sound about the right range?
For the fact that, we talk about how long it takes us to agree on things. Well, guess what? He's RB 29 for me as well. So that right out of gate, boom, on the same number ranking for Monangai. I compared it. It's very easy. Everybody's making the comparison for Ben Johnson to David Montgomery. But the cause here, or the caution, I should say, is that look at David Montgomery this year. He has 4 games under 8 points. He has 3 games over 13. And I think that's kind of what you need to understand with Monangai is that's the risk and that's the upside. He could get you 13 plus. He could also eventually only get you 4 or 5 points. And you guys both bring up a really good point. Lamar actually playing in this game would push the fact that maybe he doesn't get many touches, especially with Swift in the passing game. So that's the downside of things. I will say this helps you, Worm. Like they're getting defensive pieces back more so in the secondary, as you know. But if Lamar's back, because we've done this with the Eagles, we've done this with the Ravens, we do this every single year with the Bills and the Chiefs and everything like this. I just feel like if Lamar's back, I feel like they're going to wax the Bears. Like they're just going to come out and like it's going to be back to the Ravens being back to the Ravens. Just like it's one of those feelings. Like I could be completely wrong. It's just like I had that feeling last week about the Eagles with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Like these teams all of a sudden they get on track, and I just feel like if Lamar's out there, I feel like the Ravens are set to get back on track.
If Lamar is out there and 100% healthy, that I'm with you. I worry that they're so desperate given the 1-5 start.
That he's not 100%.
They'll be like, yeah, he's good enough. We can get him back out there. And hamstrings are really, have a high risk of re-injury. He's so, relies on mobility, obviously. Like he can be a great pocket passer, of course, but, that mobility is what makes him special. Like if that's limited, there's just like a lot that makes me worried that they are kind of in desperation mode. I mean, people, I don't know if like the national folks are talking about this as much. People in Baltimore like really kind of want Harbaugh gone. They're just kind of like, it's been, 18 years. We're just kind of ready to be done with this and move on. And so I wonder if the coaching staff feels a little pressure, like just get Lamar out there. Like Lamar has saved his job once before, trying to do it again. So like I worry about them rushing it back.
If he's gone, if they fire him mid-season, the Giants should immediately push Dable out the door and go hire Harbaugh, like to fix that situation. Like this is so stupid. This is what 3 years in a row people have been clamoring for the Eagles to fire their entire staff, and then they turn things around mid-season and they win Super Bowls, and it's still like, oh my God, things are so terrible. Fire the staff again. Like, could we just stop?
It is funny, the difference between Fitz, like the national folks talking about a guy who's really respected like Harbaugh versus the people in Baltimore. It's like night and day.
It feels like if Spurs fans a couple of years ago had been clamoring for Greg Popovich to be fired because the team was bad. Like, come on, what are you doing here? This guy has had a phenomenal track record.
I could talk about this for a full hour. I won't make everybody listen to that. Let's go to another player among the popular waiver ads, Brashard Smith. This is somebody that our colleague Fitz Debro has talked about a lot in the offseason, during draft season, into this season as a player that he really likes and wants to see get more opportunity in Kansas City. There was we put a video up on social, from Brian Drake, who's been contributing to Fantasy Pros this year. He was talking about how maybe we should be fading this kind of extra hype on Brashard Smith a lot. So there's kind of different ideas about what to do with Smith right now in the KC backfield. Jake, I'll start with you on this one. What are you doing with Smith this week? Is he somebody that if you're in a tough buy situation, are you considering starting?
Well, I think everybody's in a tough buy situation. So yes, he's considered. He's in the RB3 range for me, and that's with no Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt, it sounds like he's possibly out, but we don't really have any news. It sounds like we'll get some today. They were very quiet yesterday, it seemed. But, with the Monday night game, if we get news by Friday or even today that there's going to be no Kareem Hunt, then I would keep him in the RB3 range. I have him sandwiched between Kenneth Gainwell and Justice Hill right now to kind of give you an idea of the names I'm considering. And it really comes down to, I know what Debro was talking about because we did a lot of off-season stuff, and I even did some with Fitz on the Dynasty type talk. And I said in the draft process, I said Brashard Smith could be a Jerick McKinnon type. And then funny enough, the Chiefs draft him. I will caution one thing is the difference between McKinnon and Smith is I think McKinnon has had more opportunities to touch the ball inside the 5. I don't think they would turn to Smith in that range, especially because he also wasn't out there on pass blocking downs. They don't really trust him for those kind of opportunities. So I think expecting McKinnon, where some weeks we got RB2 top 15 return from him, I think you have to understand that Brashard Smith is more of like a true RB3 pass catcher.
What do you think, Fitz?
I'm on the same page with Jake. Again, back end RB3 for me, but in a 16 bye week, the back end RB3 territory is pretty yucky, if we're being honest. And Kareem Hunt, I'll have to drop him if Kareem Hunt plays. I'm doing my rankings right now as if Kareem Hunt is not going to play. That's the one thing that could maybe prop up Brashard Smith if he gets those extra snaps, but I'm not real excited about him. I think he's still more of just a stash right now, a worthwhile stash, but rolling him out this week, I think the ceiling would probably be pretty limited.
To your point about some of the names in this range, from running back 30 to running back 36 and this is in ECR and half PPR scoring. Kyle Monangai, Nick Chubb, RJ Harvey, Kenneth Gainwell, Brashard Smith, Isaiah Davis, Tyrone Tracy. That's not inspiring.
I mean, there's some guys in there.
I was going to say, wait till we get to the wide receiver 5s that are in the wide receiver 3 conversation this week.
Yeah, some of those guys are going to have like 6 touches this week.
But by the way, every one of those names I just read is ranked higher than Travion Henderson this week, and deservingly so, probably.
So sad.
Last popular waiver ad here. Oronde Gadsden II obviously had this huge game at tight end. Tight end, is a tricky position always. He's ranked as high as tight end 8 on the week. Again, there are some buys going on, but he's ranked certainly as if he'd be a starter. Obviously, this was this awesome, cool blow-up week. It's the first time he's been in double-digit scoring, so I wonder if there's any inclination from you, Fitz, to maybe dial back some of that aggressive ranking a bit. I don't know where you actually have him ranking. I didn't pull that up, but like I said, he's tight end 8 in ECR and half PPR scoring, 7 catches, 164 yards, and a touchdown in week 7. Is he somebody you are willing to start here on week 8?
Yeah, I think he's in that streaming conversation. It's weird. Like, there are a lot of possible streamers at tight end, and I have a hard time sorting them out this week. And Gadsden is a prospect I really liked. I think you should be excited about him for Dynasty, but I am a little skeptical of the production the last 2 weeks because for the first big game he had, there was no Quentin Johnston for the Chargers, and Justin Herbert threw 38 passes, kind of elevated passing volume. For this last game, the Chargers digging out of this deep early hole, Justin Herbert throws 55 passes, basically 2 games worth of passes in one game. And, that obviously helped boost the target count and reception count for Oronde Gadsden II. So, I just don't want to go overboard here, but I do think he's a guy you could stream, and like a lot of other tight ends, it could work out or it could fail spectacularly.
We don't, Jake, usually talk about the Thursday night players just because of the nature of when the show comes out. It's like there's not a lot of shelf life there. But I just felt like Gadsden was such a, hyped up and interesting waiver ad for anybody who had an interest in picking up a tight end that I did want to include him, at least have the conversation. So not just for this week, but also longer term, around where do you have him rest of season in your tight end rankings?
Yeah, and kind of somewhat what Fitz just said. So somebody that I liked in the draft as well, I said he's kind of a smash up in my opinion between like Mark Andrews and Kellen Winslow. I called him Mark Winslow as a fun little name. It sounds like he should have been on the TGIF with that name. But it really comes down to it's streaming tight ends, as in the fact that, and I just talked about it on my podcast too when I did my speed run this week. And I said, we need to talk about tight ends as a whole because outside of 4 or 5 guys, you're going to get 50-50. You're going to get half good games, half bad games. And the bad games are going to be bad because it's tight end. But the problem that people make the mistake of in fantasy is they chase the production, which means you already missed one good game. And then if they have the bad game, then you're like, oh, crap, I need to go find somebody else. And then they bounce back because that's what tight ends are. So it's more of an overall look. It's like, I'm not going to say Gadsden's definitively a fringe tight end one. I would put him in the same conversation of like a Mason Taylor, a Mark Andrews if he scores a touchdown. Hunter Henry's going to bounce back at some point. Like I said, Dalton Schultz is a great play this week because what we just saw with no Nico Collins and the volume that should be there, but you wouldn't expect that long term. So I'd say fringe tight end one. But to Fitz's point is we're not going to expect 55 targets every single game going around the entire field. And on top of it, the biggest detractor here is that if he succeeds, somebody has to fall off. We're not going to have 4 guys successful. We're already having a problem with 3 wide receivers. The concern would be the one that he brought up, that being Fitz, is that he said Quentin Johnston. And they don't run the same area of the field. I know that. What my problem is they run the same option, red zone, end zone presence. So if Gadsden's still a thing in the touchdown department, that means Quentin Johnston might be falling off. If Johnston bounces back, Gadsden's probably going to struggle to be consistent. So fringe tight end one, but understand at tight end, you're going to get 50-50. You have to understand, just accept the 50-50 is coming.
I feel like there's really only 4 tight ends that I'm like pretty happy to be starting this week. It's Warren, Kraft, Ferguson, and Kittle.
Week. I was going to say there's 5 as for the full season. Like the 5 was Warren, Kraft, Kittle, even coming off that game, Bowers when he's back, and I would put Jake Ferguson now in that conversation.
Yeah. And obviously 4 of those, not Bowers, him being on bye. The other 4 are playing this week. Like you get to tight end 5 in the consensus rankings. Dallas Goedert, who's currently questionable with calf. Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice just came back. Who knows what that target outlook's going to look like long term. Dalton Kincaid, also questionable. Oronde Gadsden, who's just done it 1 week. Mason Taylor, who knows what his quarterback's going to be. Harold Fannin Jr. It just gets ugly really quickly at the position. It does. Yeah. All right, let's get to our plant your flag players and hopefully some guys that we feel more strongly about and are very excited to be starting this week. Fitz, we'll start with you. Who are you planting your flag on?
Isiah Pacheco. It appears that Pacheco has regained his rightful place as the Kansas City Chiefs lead back. He had a 62.5% snap share in week 5, a season high 76.6% snap share in week 6, and he was dominating snaps last week until the Chiefs emptied the bench late because they were dog walking the Raiders. Pacheco had 15 carries last week and had his first rushing touchdown of the season. I think I'll have another nice game this week with the Chiefs, 12.5-point home favorites against the Commanders, and probably in a run-friendly game script most of the day.
Where is he ranked for you?
Night. I have Pacheco at RB 18 this week.
Okay. He's RB 22 in ECR. Jake, where do you have him?
I have him right around, I think they were like 2021. So I'm like right there with him. And it comes down to the fact that like also on top of it, the Commanders have been losing pieces and they actually just lost a significant piece on the defensive line for at least this week. And you look at the last 2 games, they've actually been destroyed by running backs, gave up 100 yards in 2 consecutive games and only took 13 or 14 carries for Swift to do it. So I'm good on this call. I think Kareem Hunt would just be more of an annoyance, but I wouldn't slide down Pacheco that far if Kareem Hunt was active. So I like this call.
Jake, who's your plant your flag player?
I'm going to stay at running back. And it's not like, oh my God, you have to start him. But I put my plant my flag as in more of like to ease the concerns because everybody saw the coming back of Chuba Hubbard and like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And it's like, you can't go away from Rico Dowdle. And they started Chuba Hubbard to start the game initially, if we hadn't even seen Rico Dowdle. And then by the end of it, it was pretty much a 50-50 split, better in yards. But at the point being here is that it's okay to say you can start both of them. And you can start both of them because I put this in the column over the Athletic. Here's the backfields, the running backfields for games against the Bills. 29.6, 5.5, 18.9, 19.7, 20.0, and 38.6. Both of them can succeed. The 5.5 was the Jets, by the way. That was a really bad game for Breece Hall and the Jets as a whole. But everybody else, at least 19 plus points where they can both be productive. We are in a 16 bye. And the comparison I made to this is they're the better version of the Seahawks, not necessarily talent-wise and not team-wise, but they're the better version for fantasy because we know both will be used. Whereas the Seahawks, it's like, oh, Charbonnet's getting the goal line carries, and it's Kenneth Walker week, and it's Charbonnet week. Like, at least we know with these, they're both going to get 14-ish plus touches any given week because they're going to lean on their backfield, even with Andy Dalton.
What do you think, Fitz?
Yeah, I know as much as the Rico Dowdle investors would love for Chuba to just go away. The Panthers gave Chuba a 4-year, $33 million contract extension in the offseason that included $15 million guaranteed. They're not kicking this dude to the curb. That's not happening. And Chuba actually played more snaps than Rico Dowdle last week. And as Jake pointed out, like, you can run on the Bills. In fact, I think there's incentive for the Panthers, whether it's Bryce Young or Andy Dalton at quarterback, to hide their quarterback as much as possible and run on the Bills.
Well, and the good thing, too, is if the game gets out of hand, Chuba Hubbard was on the field a lot more for the passing downs than Rico Dowdle was. Yep. So that kind of makes you feel a little bit better about the concerned split workload.
Dowdle at RB 19 in ECR, Chuba Hubbard at RB 25 in ECR.
Yeah,
again.
back to back.
Okay, yeah, so you've definitely got the closer gap there. I want to let everybody know that today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you want to turn all your fantasy football knowledge into real money sports bets, the Hard Rock Bet app makes sports betting simple, easy to navigate if you're starting out with all the features you want to go deep. Week 8 kicks off with the Vikings versus the Chargers. Check out these streaks from the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub right there in the app. Fantasy Pros gives Justin Herbert a B grade in our consensus quarterback rankings this week. He's thrown for over 260 yards against NFC North opponents in 4 straight games. His over is at 257.5. You can find odds for streaks just like this right now in the Hard Rock Bet app. It's not too late to try your first sports bet on Hard Rock Bet. Place a $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll score $150 in bonus bets on top of your payout. There's new promos every day, including a profit boost for Thursday night's game tonight. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, guys, let's get into some more start-sit player debates here. Starting off with the running backs, as always. I'll start with you, Fitz. Chase Brown or Breece Hall this week? Chase Brown obviously has been dealing with quarterback issues for a lot of the year. That's looking better with Flacco. Breece Hall has his own quarterback uncertainty, and even if we knew who was starting, poor play likely coming from them. So who do you like better this week, Chase Brown or Breece Hall?
Right now, I have Chase Brown ranked one spot higher. And there's a group of 5 running backs I've been having a really hard time sorting out in this week's rankings. It's running backs 13 through 17, who I have right now in order: DeAndre Swift, Chase Brown, Jaylen Warren. I guess I have 2 spots separating Brown and Hall. So it's Swift, Chase Brown, Jaylen Warren, Breece Hall, and Rachaad White. And I'm just kind of flummoxed about how to order these guys. I'm sure some of the people consuming this show have strong feelings about one or more of these guys and where they should be vis-a-vis the other RBs in this group. But I guess my sales pitch for Chase Brown would be that the Bengals win over the Steelers last week sort of gave us hope that the Bengals offense can be, I don't know, maybe 80% of what it would be with Joe Burrow at quarterback, minus the soul-crushing interceptions that Joe Flacco is inevitably going to throw. I realize Chase Brown hasn't had more than 11 carries in a game since Joe Burrow got hurt, but if Flacco can keep this up and keep the chains moving, Brown is going to get more carries. As for Breece Hall, he could get a big workload this week against the Bengals. These guys play each other, but you would have thought the same thing last week against the Panthers in a game that was pretty close and pretty dreadful throughout. Jets wound up losing 13-6, but Breece Hall played a season-low 54% snap share and had 13 touches in that game. And I wonder if the Jets might just manage his workload judiciously in advance of the November 4th trading deadline. I just wonder if Hall might be on the table for a possible trade. And by the way, Breece Hall still hasn't scored a touchdown this season. He has 118 touches in 2025, but no touchdowns.
To your point about them maybe trying to take it easy to get to that trade deadline, they're on bye next week. So if you get through this game, you get that much closer to the trade deadline without, risking an in-game injury to him. If you think that is the path that they're going down. Jake, who do you have ranked higher? Like Fitz mentioned, these guys are facing each other this week, Jets at Bengals.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to the practice reports of whether or not this will change. I have Breece Hall slightly in front of Chase Brown. And, the fact he got hurt in that game and exited for part of it. And I know Fitz knew that, I was like believing it out, haha, I'm tricking you guys or whatever. But it really comes down to I think that was a part of last week. But also I wanted to bring that up because I agree with you. That's part of the risk is if he's limited in practice. Well, they already got news on Wednesday that they were kind of holding him out of practice. And there, of course, the speculation immediately ramped up as you brought up the bye week, the trades, the rumors and everything like that. So it'll be interesting to watch. If he's a full practice come Friday, I'm going to keep Breece Hall in front of Chase Brown to talk to that point. In the two games with Joe Flacco, there's still targets going to Chase Brown, but I don't like the way that they're different to when Chase Brown was with Browning and briefly with Joe Burrow, is that they're more of oh my gosh, there's nothing. I'm going to dump it off almost basically in the backfield. He had receptions last week that ended up being negative yards total. He actually lost yards in the receiving game. And so I bring that up to say they're very similar in the fact that they're going to get targets, they're going to get opportunities. I just like Hall's passing game better than Chase Brown's, where I'll give it that slim margin. I'll do one. I don't even know if you ever saw it because you haven't seen anything or ever been to Taco Bell or all your things you've never done, but I'll reference X-Files for you. I want to believe in Chase Brown because I bought low. You have never seen X-Files? Is that why you're shaking your head?
No, I'm familiar with the show. I know what it is, but I've never seen an episode.
Of course. But I want to believe, just like X-Files, that Chase Brown is back with Joe Flacco. I bought low in some spots, so I'm rooting for it. But a full practice would go to Hull. If he's limited still on Friday, I will come around and be on Fitz's side of it. Is a limited practice is going to be enough of a concern that I would start Chase Brown in front of him.
I just did a puzzle because with the surgery, it's just easy to sit on the couch and do a puzzle, and it was a bunch of 90s stuff all together in one big image, and the X-Files.
You didn't know half of it?
I knew some, there was Seinfeld and The Simpsons. Well, I've never seen The Simpsons, but I'm aware of The Simpsons, and there was a Game Boy Color.
I wasn't even bringing that up. You've never seen The Simpsons. I was letting that one go. There's enough that you've got going on.
But yes, a lot of the references in that puzzle were a little over my head. Yeah, Breece Hall, he has the 13th most rushing yards in the NFL this season. Every player with more rushing yards than him has multiple touchdowns. He, of course, has 0. In fact, the only other player inside the top 34 in rushing yards this season without a touchdown is Jaylen Warren. Everybody else has at least one, and a lot of those guys have multiple. So
isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Jaylen Warren's like allergic to the end zone.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's just interesting. Even if you were fully confident in health and the offense that they're in, it just the scoring opportunities have not been there for Hall so far. Chase Brown only has 1 touchdown, so obviously it's not like it's much better, but clearly does look a little different with Flacco there. So these guys are in a similar range in ECR. Fitz, I know you said they're kind of in a group for you of players that you're struggling to rank. Breece Hall is RB13 in ECR, and Chase Brown is RB16 in ECR. So there are a few spots apart there. Let's go to another running back debate here. Jake, I'll start with you on this one. Jacory, Croskey-Merritt, or Rhamondre Stevenson? Would you rather start Bill or Rhamondre here in week 8?
I saw the sheet, and I know you did this on purpose, didn't you? Because I jinxed myself. I said it was going to happen, and Croskey-Merritt did not score a touchdown last week and broke my streak of starting the season off so well. So I know 100% you put him in this list just to dig right at me.
I
with
would
this
never.
I will say I have them back to back. I have Stevenson 1 spot over Croskey-Merritt, and I'm not even that afraid of the Chiefs' run defense this year like we were last season. It just comes down to exactly why he didn't get the touchdown. They went back to Chris Rodriguez at the goal line, and Chris Rodriguez got the touchdown. And I know maybe that's part of it, just, no Daniels for part of it, or he got hurt again. But that's the other side of it. If there is no Jaden Daniels, which there isn't, and we have Marcus Mariota, does this offense click as well? It's just a lot of questions going right now with the Commander situation where at least I know Stevenson is the lead, and he's going to be the lead, and he's going to fumble and still be the lead. Whereas Croskey-Merritt, I never know on a week-to-week what his touch workload is going to be. If I knew both of them were going to get 15 touches, I would start Croskey-Merritt, but I just don't know that's going to happen.
Yeah, as it turns out, Rhamondre Stevenson maybe has the strongest job security of anybody in the NFL this season.
The entire NFL.
So these guys they're back-to-back for you, Jake. They're also back-to-back in ECR. It's funny because it's two names that I don't really want to be starting, Fitz, but with the buys, they are both inside RB2 range. They are RB23 and RB24 respectively. Rhamondre Stevenson, again, has this job security, but he's going up against Cleveland, whose run defense has been amazing this year.
Yep.
Bill, is going up against the Chiefs, who, if you think the Chiefs are going to dominate Washington in this game, there's a good chance that he maybe gets game scripted out. And he has not really done much. For as excited as everybody has been about Croskey-Merritt this season, it's really only been one blow-up week in Week 5 against the Chargers, 2 touchdowns, 111 yards. Besides that, he did have a touchdown and 82 yards back in Week 1. It's been a whole lot of RB64, RB26, RB43, RB36, RB44. There has not really been a very high ceiling outside of that one main breakout game in Week 5.
But hopefully there's a sturdy floor because he's had 13 carries at minimum in each of his last 3 games and probably would have had more than 13 last week if the Commanders weren't getting blown out by the Cowboys. So I know the Marcus Mariota factor is not ideal. You'd rather play Bill with Jaden Daniels in there, but maybe they have to lean harder on Bill with Daniels out. And as Jake said, the Chiefs' run defense, not really a matchup to fear this season. The Chiefs are 13th in DVOA against the run, giving up 4.6 yards per carry to running backs. Stevenson, much tougher matchup against the Browns, first in DVOA against the run, 3.5 yards per carry to running backs. And Rhamondre hasn't had more than 54 rushing yards in any game except for his 88-yard rushing day against the lowly Tennessee Titans last week. And as much as we joke about the Rhamondre Stevenson job security, if you're an investor, you are living in constant fear that the next Rhamondre fumble could send him to the bench.
Where do you have them ranked, Fitz? Like I said, RB23 and RB24. Is that the right range for you?
So I've got Bill a little higher. I've got him RB19. And I have Stevenson at RB23.
Okay. So, close-ish, but definitely having Bill higher.
Stronger on Croskey-Merritt.
A little bit, yeah.
Would you start these guys? And I'm just asking because he's very close in ECR. And again, we don't usually do Thursday games, but he's right there. Actually, the 2 guys, I should say, Jordan Mason and Kamani Vidal are right next to these guys in ECR. Would you start these 2 over or behind those guys playing on Thursday night? Or are they kind of in the middle in that same range for you?
I have Vidal in between Croskey-Merritt and Stevenson.
And Mason?
I would go...
Oh, sorry.
Mason.
And I have Mason lowest of the group, but that depends. And that is... do we know what Aaron Jones' status is right now?
No.
I have not seen anything official yet.
Yeah, so if he's I'm kind of assuming Jones is active for this game, but if he's not, then I'd have to probably elevate Mason above all these guys.
That's what I was going to say. I have Vidal ahead. I would play Vidal, and then I would play Mason with no Jones. And then if Mason has Jones, I might still lean him, but that makes it tougher.
Okay. Yeah, so if Jones is playing, you would have Mason behind Pacheco and Stevenson, you're saying? Or you
definitely, I would have Mason definitively behind Pacheco. It would come down to, I'd probably still
I'm sorry,
I
was looking at Pacheco because he's in that range too. I meant to say Croskey.
No, you're fair.
Stevenson, sorry.
No, yeah, I would probably go Mason. I would still probably go Mason over both.
Okay.
Between all the splits, he's still the lead, and it's Jones' first game back. So.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the wide receiver debates here. Fitz, starting with you again. Tetairoa, McMillan, or Tee Higgins? We talked a little bit about the Bengals offense already when we were talking about Chase Brown. Higgins, obviously somebody who has been kind of resuscitated by Joe Flacco, not to the same degree that Jamar Chase has been, but it clearly looks better with Flacco than it did with Browning. So Tee Higgins or Tetairoa McMillan, who has been a darling of the show all season, not coming off his strongest game. He did have his first 2 touchdowns a couple of weeks ago. Didn't get back in the end zone this last week. So Tetairoa McMillan or Tee Higgins this week. Fitz, who do you like better?
I'm going to go with Tetairoa McMillan. He is wide receiver 27 in half-point PPR scoring right now. Tee Higgins, wide receiver 35, although obviously Tee Higgins' outlook is brighter with the arrival of Joe Flacco in Cincinnati. Big game last week against the Steelers. Now he gets a Jets defense that may or may not have Sauce Gardner, who has a concussion, I believe. I just think McMillan is really good. And for him to be averaging 7.8 yards per target when Bryce Young has averaged 5.8 yards per pass attempt. Sort of hints at what a terrific player McMillan is. And maybe Andy Dalton would be an upgrade for him if Dalton were to play. Like, Dalton is a veteran. He understands the assignment. He's going to find the 6'5" rookie. So for T-Mac's sake, I kind of want to see Andy Dalton play in this game.
I was going to ask that. So, Jake, I'll ask you. Andy Dalton, potentially, possibly even likely playing in this game. Is that something that would want to make you rank Tetairoa McMillan higher or lower? Is this going to be like a Flacco thing where a veteran comes in and says, let me just spam the best receiver on the team the way he's done with Chase? And not that McMillan is as good as Chase, but kind of that version of it on the Panthers? Or would you be less excited about McMillan if Dalton does end up starting?
So I would be slightly more, and I actually have Dalton in. So I fully believe Bryce Young he's not playing.
I think it will be Dalton, but I'm just kind of couching it in case. But
yeah, I have McMillan at 18 with Dalton. If it was Bryce Young, I'd probably slide him down 2 spots. I'd still keep him in front of Stefon Diggs going against Cleveland. Even though he's been the number one, a decent buy low, and maybe even a better buy low after this week. That's kind of a tough matchup there. But actually, the reason I'm going Tee Higgins is what Fitz just said. This was already going to be the benefit of being the 2 versus the Jets, which has just been destroying that team all year long because Gardner sits on the 1. Well, guess what? We don't have to worry about Gardner sitting on the 1. And maybe that just means Lamar Chase is going to have one of his 250-yard days again. But I lean for Higgins with what Flacco's been doing with this team against the Jets defense, which is nothing. And the caution for Dalton is like, we should be more excited. That's why he's a few spots higher. And I'm not saying Fitz is wrong because he might be right. We want him to be right because we want Dalton to come in and throw 12 targets to McMillan and just go, go, go. But Dalton's a veteran who will also spread it around at times if that's what he's being given. So if the focus for this game being Buffalo and what little defense they do have in the passing game is better than their run game, and they sit on McMillan and treat him as a 1 like the Jets would treat Ja'Marr Chase if they had Gardner, that's my only hesitation of why I'm going Tee Higgins over McMillan. They're 2 spots apart, so I'm not like, oh my God, you're crazy to start McMillan over Higgins.
This is another, I don't always do this. I try and look more at your guys' rankings in ECR when I'm coming up with these, but this is another one where they are back-to-back in ECR. It's wide receiver 17 for Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver 18 for Tee Higgins. So the consensus is that they are, right back-to-back. And some of the names around them, like Michael Pittman Jr., George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Diggs is a couple spots behind them. So that's kind of the range that they're in. I feel like this one, of all the kind of players I put head-to-head in this episode, this is the most one where I feel kind of just like, it's kind of almost like a coin to flip. Like, you could convince me either way. I see these as very close between Tet and T. Let's go to the other wide receiver debate here. George Pickens or Stefon Diggs, who I just mentioned, both of those guys kind of being in a similar range here. Jake, who do you prefer, Pickens or Diggs?
So I'm getting a lot of pushback for this. I am way down on Pickens this week because of the Denver defense. And I have a pretty decent gap even with going against the Browns that I just brought up for Stefon Diggs to kind of lead you into this one. I mean, just look at here. I'll bring it up. On the season, there's 4 double-digit scores against the Broncos. 4. 2 were in the same game when Justin Herbert went off for kind of went off in that game. They didn't score, a ton in that game, but it was 11 targets to Keenan Allen, 10 to Quentin Johnston. They both scored double digits. Outside of that, Devontae Smith and Wan'Dale Robinson. What did Wan'Dale Robinson and Keenan Allen do? And Devontae Smith at times in that game is actually a lot more slot work. And people are like, oh my God, you're going to get the Patrick Surtain treatment on CeeDee Lamb. So that means the number 2, it's not the same as the Jets. The number 2, Moss, is actually one of the better rated corners in the league. It's not like this huge drop off. Their number 2s are actually stifling throughout the year. I mean, you can look at AJ Brown struggled in that game against them. You go to like Ladd McConkey was quiet. Ja'Marr Chase and Tee Higgins, and granted it was Browning at the time, but both of them came out with nothing. So it's not like they're just letting things happen to the number 2s. So I have Pickens down way behind consensus, and it's just because I am really worried about the Denver Broncos defense. I just think they're doing a really good job against against wide receivers this year. So I have Diggs, and I have Diggs a good 6-7 spots in front of George Pickens this week.
Are you just out of curiosity, Jake, fading Lamb at all in this matchup too? Like, you just kind of the receivers across the board, or is it specifically Pickens?
It's more so Pickens, especially the touchdown reliance from what we've seen with Lamb. Not that I hate Pickens, and I think Dak Prescott's a good enough quarterback to do it. It just comes down to if you're Dak Prescott and you're going up this defense, like this is one of those ones where I don't like to play matchups too much because I'm not going to fade CeeDee Lamb against Surtain. I'm not going to fade any elites against Surtain, but it's enough of a concern where like it's just I know what you're going to get in this game, or the risk, I should say. I know what the risk is in this game. The risk is this is possibly Dak Prescott's worst game of the season, and I would trust the 1, not the 2 in that case.
Fitz, how do you see this one? Pickens or Diggs this week?
I like Pickens here.
Pickens.
Definitely.
I knew you were good.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, I think last week was a reminder not to, and I have immense respect for the Broncos defense. It is a really tough pass defense, probably the best pass rush in the league. But last week was kind of a reminder not to overinflate the importance of the defensive matchup, I guess, with a defense like the Broncos, who gave up 32 points to the Giants and probably should have given up more if the Giants kicker could actually convert a kick. Pickens has 6 touchdowns in his last 6 games, and he's averaged 96 yards a game over that stretch. And I know the matchup is daunting, but like, I don't know if it's a lock that Patrick Surtain Jr. is going to be shadowing Pickens all game because maybe CeeDee Lamb is going to line up in the slot. I mean, maybe, but Lamb is only lining up in the slot 32.5% of the time, according to our friends at playerprofiler.com. So if CeeDee Lamb is lining up outside a good amount of the time, you would think the Broncos might occasionally line up Surtain opposite Lamb. And then I don't know. I don't think quite as much as Jauan McMillan and Riley Moss as Jake does. So
it's more so Moss for me. But again, like it was mostly out of the slot and tight ends. I mean, honestly, and it's not like the Giants have anything as the number 2 wide receiver, but I get your point. I think that's just the difference in the. So what's your, out of curiosity, like how far is your gap to Pickens to Diggs?
Not great. I have Pickens, let's see, wide receiver, is it 16? It is wide receiver 15 and Diggs wide receiver 19. So
we're basically almost in lockstep with Diggs. It's just the fact that I have Pickens behind him that really comes down to it.
Yeah, and like we saw Sauce Gardner shadow Pickens earlier this season was when Lamb was hurt, and Pickens did only have 2 catches in that game, but one of them was a 43-yard touchdown where he won a contested catch against Sauce, and that is George Pickens' special sauce, making tough contested catches against tight coverage. So I worry about shadow coverage or like tough cornerback matchups less with George Pickens than I do with just about any other receiver because of how he makes plays. And I like Stefon Diggs, drafted him in a lot of leagues, going to start him in all of those leagues. But Drake May does spread the ball around somewhat, and there's only been one game this year where Stefon Diggs has had more than 7 targets. But of course, Diggs has been really efficient with his targets.
I'm glad you kind of hit on Diggs a little at the end there, Fitz, because I felt like he was kind of getting short shrift in this conversation. It was very much about like the gap on Pickens and Diggs kind of like you guys agreed almost on him. It's just, where you had Pickens on either side of it. An interesting matchup against Cleveland. They're so good against the run. They're a good defense overall, but they're particularly good against the run. So it'll be curious to see what New England does against them. Pickens, interestingly, in ECR, so you can see some names will have like a little arrow next to them on fantasypros.com/rankings. And if you hover over that, it'll show you how their positional ECR has risen or fallen in the last X number of days. Pickens has gone up 18 spots in the last 2 days. So like he was ranked a lot lower before, the last couple of days here, and that has really shot up. He is now up at wide receiver 16. When I put this together, he was a few spots lower even just yesterday. So he for whatever reason, the consensus has been rising on Pickens here throughout this week. Let's go to some more rapid fire start-sit decisions here. Got another running back one for you. Start with you, Fitz. Nick Chubb or Tyjae Spears this week?
Ugh. I have Spears ranked 1 spot higher. Just give me the guy with the pass-catching potential. Don't make me talk about these guys.
Again, it is a heavy bye week, which is why these guys are in range of you might have to make this decision. Tyjae Spears is RB 29. Nick Chubb, I mentioned earlier, is RB 31. So this is very firmly in startable territory. And decision-making time. Jake, what do you think? Do you have any interest in weighing in more heavily than Fitz did on Chubb versus Spears?
No, and it's a good thing it's rapid fire because it's basically the same thing. As Spears one spot in front of Chubb. But fortunately, they're facing the Colts, which you expect the Colts offense to keep churning along. So we got a 60-40 split. Spears on the 40, but that's the biggest we've seen, and it could push to 50-50 this week. So that's why I'll take it.
All right, how about maybe a more interesting one? We'll see what you guys think. Jauan Jennings or Tez Johnson. Obviously, Mike Evans out for a long time for Tampa Bay. Jennings has been dealing with his own injury stuff, but, played last week and appears to be fine to play this week. Jennings is wide receiver 31. Tez is a little lower, wide receiver 38, so there's more of a gap on this one. Jake, I'll start with you. Tez Johnson or Jauan Jennings?
Tez Johnson. And it comes down to the comparison I made earlier this week, and I'm not calling him 100%, but he's very similar. Just picture Tank Dell on the Buccaneers as the number 2. People be losing their minds. We'd be like top 20 Tank Dell, like forget about it. Like, and again, I say Tez Johnson's a rookie. He's not quite Tank Dell, but even if he's 90%, we don't have, at least for this week, we don't have Chris Godwin. It's a question mark after the bye, what he's going to be. So I'm going to play Tez Johnson on the upside of what does Baker Mayfield keep doing? It's just going out there, putting his case in the MVP conversation. He's not going to get it because Patrick Mahomes is doing his thing. But I'm going to play Tez Johnson over, I don't know any given week what the hell Jauan Johnson is. He goes from, hey, I'm going to be fine for Monday Night Football. And then it's like, oh, by the way, I had 5 broken ribs and all these twisted ankles. And then he goes back last week. I'm like, oh, off their injury report. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. Like, what the hell, dude? So it really comes down to, Kittle's back in the mix. Kendrick Bourne fell off last week, but has been a thing. I do have Pearsall in the ranks right now. It actually sounds like he probably won't play because he's still missing practice. But even with no Pearsall, Jennings isn't going to get past Tez Johnson for me.
Fitz?
Yeah, Worm, it's annoying how you find these points of weakness in my rankings and then go on the attack. I currently have Jennings ranked a few spots higher than Tez. I don't know if that's the right call. Jennings just hasn't done much this season. He's banged up. George Kittle is back. And even though Kittle had 0 catches last week, he's going to be prominently involved going forward. If Pearsall comes back this week, I would certainly pivot to Tez. Although, as Jake said, Pearsall wasn't practicing as of Wednesday. I think I'm going to have to push Tez ahead of Jennings. Like, I think Tez was the better waiver ad than Sterling Shepard, who's just a short area possession receiver, while Tez is, I love Jake's Tank Dell comparison. Like, Tez is a serious big play threat. He's averaging 17 yards per catch. Scored a touchdown in 2 straight games. So, yeah, the heck with it. I'm going to start Tez and switch these guys in my rankings.
For him after his catch.
To your point, Fitz, Jauan Jennings has 1 game better than wide receiver 55. And part of it is because of the injuries and everything. But he has 5 games. Only one of them is higher than 55.
And I do wonder, it seems like Jauan Jennings has pretty good chemistry with Brock Purdy and not so much at all with Mac Jones. So maybe if Purdy comes back eventually, that perks up Jennings some, but I don't know. I would rather just roll with Tez, I think.
Yeah, he had those 7 targets. Some of those were not catchable last week.
Yeah.
Let's do some flexes here. DK Metcalf or Alvin Kamara. These guys are ranked close together. Starting with you, Fitz, Metcalf or Kamara?
Metcalf by a pretty wide margin for me. I'm not really buying this idea that the Kendre Miller injury is going to lead to a big uptick in Alvin Kamara's workload. I think Miller's snaps and touches just go to Devin Neal, a rookie from Kansas I really liked pre-draft, but Neal was drafted later than I thought he'd be and then got outplayed by Kendre Miller in training camp. Kamara's averaging 3.6 yards per carry and 4.9 yards per catch this season. I know he is a sacred cow in fantasy, but Kamara has not looked good this year, and it's his age 30 season, and maybe the juice is gone, and he's just not the same guy anymore. For me, this is like a snap call for Metcalf.
Like I said, they're back-to-back in the flex rankings. Metcalf is 29th, Kamara is 30th. Fitz, what do you expect out of just Metcalf and the Steelers in general against your Packers defense?
I don't know. It's been such a weird year for Metcalf in that he is normally a big air yards guy and not a big yards after catch guy. And that has been totally flipped on its head this week with the shorter passing attack with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. And DK already has more yards after the catch than he's had entire seasons during his heyday in Seattle. So I don't know. It really depends on how much heat the Packers can put on Aaron Rodgers. Because if he has no time to throw, which might be a distinct possibility, then DK is going to have a hard time doing much of anything. But if Rodgers has time to throw, you can absolutely beat the Packers cornerbacks.
Jake, who do you like better, Metcalf or Kamara?
Yeah, I have Kamara one spot in front of Metcalf. I don't feel it as strongly one side or the other as Fitz does. And I do like Devin Neal. I actually thought that he had some comparisons to like James Robinson from back in the day, who should have been drafted, but like kind of that. But the point being is that like actually better profile in the NFL as a true number two, which that's the point here is that I think that Fitz is making is that he could step into the Kendra Miller role. The only concern I would have is that they basically bell cowed Kamara after that point. And then we've seen this before. That was an in-game adjustment with a full week's practice that could absolutely change with Neal. But I'm going to lean slightly towards the workload of Kamara. And this is just maybe just there's no basis behind it, but Fitz knows this, like what I'm about to say is I just feel like the Packers are going to be like, if there's one thing we're going to do, we are going to make sure that Aaron Rodgers just gets obliterated in this game and we do not let Aaron Rodgers beat us because he's Aaron Rodgers and it's us. Like, it's just one of those like NFL things. Like, it just feels like I don't even like Aaron Rodgers that much this week coming off the game. And maybe I'm a fool and maybe Aaron Rodgers should have proved to me that he can still do it last week in a game that we all thought was going to be a slog. But I just have a real concern that this offense outside of outside of the running back with Jaylen Warren isn't really going to do much of anything in this entire game.
Let's go to another one here. Jake, I'll start with you. Xavier Worthy or Chuba Hubbard, a guy that we talked about already. Hubbard or Worthy, who do you like better?
So I do this a lot, but it's context. So I do have Hubbard in front of Worthy by a decent amount of spots, but it comes down to also what do you want? Because I do think definitively if you need ceiling, and there were still some opportunities for Xavier Worthy last week with Rashee Rice, and Rashee Rice didn't even play the full game, and part of it was also because the starters didn't play the full game. But even before that, Rashee Rice wasn't even out for the full amount. And I say that to say, I think we're going to get full Rashee Rice this week. They were finding ways to get the ball in his hand, obviously, with those little scoop passes at that goal line. And I do have concerns of Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, but more so for Kelce. But if I'm still shooting for ceiling, like I'm still going to shoot for Xavier Worthy. And that's where I say, like, I bring that up a lot. I would go in a vacuum, Chuba Hubbard, but if I needed the potential for a 20-point game, I don't think Hubbard gets that even against the Bills' run defense because of how much that backfield will be split.
Chiefs are so interesting, Fitz, just like trying to guess what they're going to do because that game was so unique in that they just completely, utterly dominated the Raiders in such a way that they didn't need to really do anything. Early on, clearly it was like, all right, let's get Rice kind of back involved. I think you could paint a picture that the offense going into that game was like, we know we're going to destroy the Raiders regardless, so let's just like make an effort to get Rice back and comfortable and almost use this as like a warm-up game for Rice for the rest of the season. And then they didn't need to do much later, again, because they were so thoroughly dominant. So I find it really interesting to evaluate what we expect out of the Chiefs offense going forward. So having said that, would you prefer Worthy or Hubbard this week?
I would prefer Worthy. And yeah, I know last week's result might have been dejecting for Worthy investors, but I don't think the return of Rashee Rice is going to crush Xavier Worthy's value. Like Rice and Worthy have complementary skill sets. They are different types of receivers. And hey, Andy Reid is letting Patrick Mahomes sling it this year. The Chiefs have the highest pass rate over expected in the league by a wide margin. And I do think Chuba Hubbard is playable. We talked about this earlier with Chuba being a flag plant guy for Jake. Split backfields, and the Bills are not a tough matchup, but the Panthers do have a below-average offense, and I would prefer the explosive receiver in a very high-powered offense.
Let's stick with the Chiefs offense here, the next flex one. How about Isiah Pacheco or Jalen Waddle this week, Fitz?
Yeah, another case of the explosive offense versus whatever the Miami Dolphins offense is these days. So, not that I'm scared of starting Waddle. Like, he and HN are the two guys you can still fire up for Miami, but Tua was just so awful last week. Really, the last 2 weeks. I mean, he has 6 interceptions in 2 games, and the Dolphins have a pretty tough matchup against a very underrated Falcons pass defense. So give me Pacheco here.
Jake?
Yeah, I'm going Pacheco by a decent chunk on this one. The Falcons' defense is beyond like underrated at this point. There's people out there that might respect them, but they're shutting down a lot in the passing game, not even letting up almost 200 yards to most quarterbacks. So where's it going to go? But also, by the way, 10-99-1. I know we're not talking tight ends, but that's on the entire year what they've given up to tight ends, including George Kittle, Hawkinson, Zach Ertz, K-Dot, and it's like names that they're facing. Like these aren't schlub tight ends. So definitely worried about the Falcons matchup. I am going Pacheco easily in this one.
I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this one. Tyler Algier or DJ Moore? Moore obviously has been up and down, but going up against this Ravens defense that is maybe getting healthier, but has been quite bad this year. Algier going up against the worst run defense in football. Like he's the guy is very likely to score a touchdown in games where the Falcons win, and I should certainly expect them to beat the Dolphins. So I actually think Algier is like a really sneaky great play this week, given the matchup. So I'm curious, Jake, I'll start with you. Who do you like better between Moore and Algier?
So I'm going to go back to that whole, do you need the upside of the floor play? And it's actually the opposite. This is not the norm. Normally you say the floor play is the running back. I'm guaranteeing touches. And if you're guaranteeing touches, it's actually DJ Moore hovering around wide receiver 30 to 40 most weeks. And that's pretty much what he's been. It's been a disappointment for Moore, but he's been consistency. And he's basically been Jacoby Myers at this point. Whereas if you look at Algier, here's his finishes: 52, 16, 70, 28, 15, 58. If you need the ceiling, it's Algier, but this is the same thing that we said weeks ago when they got completely destroyed and the upset of getting 30-0 against the Panthers. And nobody expects that to happen. But that's the risk, is that in a down game where they do Leon Bijan because it's close, or they're even losing, and you don't see a lot of Algier, you might only get 3 points. But if what everybody thinks will happen does happen, then Algier is probably going to have one of his top 20 finishes because everybody expects them to roll right over the Dolphins.
Fitz?
Yeah, for me, it's Algier. Moore, well, first of all, Moore didn't practice on Wednesday. He's got this hip injury, but I think it's the same injury that, it actually briefly hospitalized him shortly after the Bears Week 6 game, but Moore still played in Week 7 against the Saints. I'm guessing he plays this week, but I would rather play Tyler Algier against a Dolphins defense that has been getting wrecked by running backs every week. 84 yards and 3 touchdowns to Quinshon Judkins last week. 124 rushing yards to Kamani Vidal the week before that. 206 rushing yards and a touchdown to Rico Dowdle the week before that. You get the idea. Algier has gotten double-digit carries in 4 of the Falcons' 6 games so far, and in all 3 of their home games. This is their 4th home game. I think Algier is absolutely playable on a 16 bye week against the terrible Miami Dolphins defense.
For what it's worth, Algier did pop up on the injury report as a limited participant on Wednesday at practice with a hip/knee issue. So a couple of issues there. So
yeah, Wednesdays.
It's just mentioning it because we mentioned possible injury concern for Moore. I know it's not the same, but just double check, keep an eye on it. I really like Algier this week. I will be starting him in a lot of places to try and take advantage of that matchup for sure. Let's go to quarterback one here. How about Caleb Williams, again, going up against that, what has been a very poor Ravens defense, or Jackson Dart, who just faced this Eagles team a couple of weeks ago. Fitz, starting with you, Caleb or Dart this week?
Caleb. Worm, do I really have to remind you how bad the Ravens defense has been this season? There's no denying how good Jackson Dart has been. This kid has got moxie. I wasn't high enough on him in our dynasty shows this offseason. Total mea culpa for me. I thought the NFL might be a tough adjustment for him coming out of Lane Kiffin's system in Ole Miss. I could not have been more wrong about Jackson Dart, who has the it factor. But Jackson Dart's best wide receiver right now is Wan'Dale Robinson. His second best receiver is Lil Jordan Humphrey. His third best receiver, I don't know, probably some other dude with an apostrophe in his first name. The Eagles get a rematch against the Giants this week after the Giants just embarrassed them on Thursday night a couple weeks ago. You know the defending champs are going to be out for vengeance in this one. And by the way, the Eagles did not have wrecking ball defensive tackle Jalen Carter for that first game against the Giants. They will have Jalen Carter for this rematch on Sunday. So I'm taking Caleb Williams over Jackson Dart, who I think I think could maybe have his first game where he struggles a bit.
Caleb faced a very bad defense last week and had under 6 fantasy points. So I know the Ravens have been quite bad, but
yeah, it was super windy in Chicago. The Bears led the whole game. I'm not saying he played well, and obviously the Bears running game was working quite well against the Saints.
I wonder if that will be the case again, where it's the Bears running game that is, because
could be.
Matabike is the guy that's out for the season for the Ravens. They're getting so many players back, like more in the secondary, where I wonder if it will be a game where they just say, hey, let's see if like Swift and Monangai can go dominate this thing for us, which I think is possible. I'm not saying I wouldn't guarantee it, but I think it's on the table. So that's like kind of the hesitance with Caleb, even in what normally would be like, oh, Caleb versus what this Ravens defense has been this year would seem like a no-brainer, but that's why I bring it up. Jake, what do you think, Caleb or Dart?
And so for all these reasons here, the pieces that the Ravens are getting back, possibly up to 3, at least 2, it sounds like, are all pass defense options. It's not the run game as you're bringing up. And then Caleb Williams has 2 games over 1 touchdown. 2. Yeah, there's a 1-2 touchdown game and 1-4 touchdown game. And so when I'm kind of splitting the hairs, if I agree with Fitz, this is a rematch 2 weeks later against the Eagles, could easily destroy them. But I'm just going to take, when I have questions about both quarterbacks, the one that I know is going to run. I know he will, and I know I'll get the rushing upside of Jackson Dart. So it's a slim margin. I have Dart and Caleb Williams 2 spots apart from each other. I just think the Giants need Dart a lot more than the Bears need Caleb Williams to be contenders in their games.
At tight end, Dalton Schultz or Cade Otton, Jake?
Dalton Schultz. Like, this is a decent chunk for me. Cade Otton's a thing with no Mike Evans and no Ibuka and no Godwin, or like basically when they're all out. And we've seen that Cade Otton's not much of a thing when they have at least 1 wide receiver, if not 2. And I'm factoring in Tej Johnson for that. Dalton Schultz was peppered to death with no Nico Collins and was even seeing a decent chunk because they were down to basically rookies at wide receiver and Xavier Hutchinson. So I'm going to chase Dalton Schultz again. It's an opportunity where like the 49ers are most vulnerable to slot wide receivers. Well, Schultz, it plays a lot in that same area, which is why I also like Noel in this game as a deep flyer, because that's where the area that they really struggle against. So you have that clear option is between Noel and Schultz. And that's why I'm going to give Schultz the easy thread over. Like, do they even need Cade Otton to win that game? They should win that one over the Saints handily.
Fitz, they're back-to-back in ECR, tight end 14 and tight end 15. Who do you prefer, Schultz or Otton?
I prefer Otton. There's not a big gap. Ranking the tight ends is really tough this week. I don't think there's much separating like the guys from tight end 8 to tight end 19 or 20. And
I was going to say 28.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like stream-a-rama at tight end this week. And there are a bunch of guys in that big group who have elevated fantasy outlooks because they have injured wide receivers on their teams. And that's the case here with Dalton Schultz and Cade Otton, with Nico Collins, pretty unlikely to clear the concussion protocol after getting his concussion Monday night and having one less day than usual to clear the protocol. Buccaneers lost Mike Evans to the broken collarbone, one of Chris Godwin either, obviously. So just for me, it's Otton, better quarterback, better offense. That's what it comes down to for me.
Say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with Fantasy Pros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Pros app and make winning decisions in no time. We are about to do our touchdown calls for the week, but first, join our free touchdown calls contest in the Fantasy Pros Discord. Each week, pick 4 players you think will score with a bonus flex worth double. Weekly winners get a $25 Fantasy Pros gift card, and the season champ takes home a signed Bijan Robinson jersey. Play now by going to fantasypros.com/chat and heading to the touchdown calls channel. I am on running back this week. I will be taking Tyler Algier. We just talked about it. He often scores when the team wins. I expect them to win. Terrible run defense. I like Algier this week. I almost took Bijan just to make it, but that just felt too easy. So I was like, I'll take Algier because I do think he scores. Yeah, they will both score would be my bet. Jake, you are on wide receiver.
I got a rebound this week, and I thought about, rebounding and take the layups and going like Rashee Rice or Igbuka and be like, I get back on track, but I'll go a little bit deeper. I'm going to go back to that Jets matchup, especially potentially with no Sauce Gardner. So I'm not taking Chase, but I'm taking Tee Higgins. I think Tee Higgins scores again. I think Joe Flacco is waking up this offense. And I told you didn't put it in there. I'll even give you a bonus because I need to make up for last week. I'll give him 2. I'll try to go 2 for 2. Courtland Sutton, definitely against the Cowboys. That actually feels more of a layup than Tee Higgins does.
Yeah, probably. Fitz, you're on tight end.
You guys are coming in with these fun touchdown calls, and I just have to go with boring old Dalton Kincaid this week. Kincaid, 3 touchdowns in 5 games so far, and Bills tight ends have combined for 5 touchdowns this season. Josh Allen just looks for his tight ends when the Bills get into scoring range.
And going up against Carolina.
Up against Carolina.
Yeah. So Tyler Algier, Tee Higgins, Dalton Kincaid, those are our picks. You can dominate your fantasy football league with Fantasy Pros Premium, now available for free for 6 months when you deposit and place your first wager on one of our partner sportsbooks. This is the easiest way to get full access to our top fantasy tools all season long. Go to fantasypros.com/premium to get started. For Jake and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck here in week 8. We'll see you next time.